Imagine waking up one morning and realizing something is terribly wrong with the sun. The sky is strangely dim, the sunlight is weak, and the world feels colder than it should. There are no satellites to explain it, no weather forecasts, no scientific instruments to warn anyone. For people living in the 6th century, the strange sky must have been terrifying. And according to historical accounts, something remarkable happened in the year 536. The Byzantine historian Procopius wrote that the sun gave its light with summer became colder, crops struggled, and harvests became increasingly uncertain. For people who depended entirely on the land, this was not simply bad weather. It was the beginning of a crisis that would affect entire societies. But what could possibly make the sun appear weaker across such a vast part of the world? Modern scientists have found evidence suggesting that a major volcanic event occurred around this exact period. The evidence comes from places that seem completely unrelated to an ancient volcano. Ancient trees and ice buried deep beneath the frozen surface of Greenland. Inside these natural records, scientists discovered chemical traces left behind by volcanic activity. The deeper they looked, the clearer the picture became. Something had disrupted the climate on a scale that could be felt thousands of miles away. But there was a problem. Scientists still cannot say with absolute certainty where the 536. What they do know is that the climate shock was real. Tree rings show signs of severely reduced growth during this period, and the consequences were not limited to trees. People depended on predictable seasons to grow food, raise animals, and survive the winter. When those seasons suddenly changed, entire communities became vulnerable. And then, only a few years later, another enormous volcanic eruption struck around 540. The climate was hit again. For the people living through these events, there was no scientific explanation waiting for them. They simply saw the sky change, the cold intensify, and food become harder to find. Then came another crisis that would make the 6th century even darker. In 541, the plague of Justinian began spreading through the Mediterranean world. Climate stress, food shortages, war, and disease created a dangerous combination. But historians are careful here. Not every disaster of the 6th century can simply be blamed on the climate. History is rarely caused by one thing. Disasters interact, societies respond, and consequences build over time. So was 536 really the worst year in human history? We cannot know that for certain.
But we can say that it marked the beginning of one of the most extraordinary climate disruptions of the last 2,000 years. And the strangest part is that the people living through it had no idea what was happening above their heads. They looked at the dim.
The story of 536 is not simply the story of a dark sky. It is the story of how fragile human societies can become when several crises arrive at once. A change in the atmosphere can affect crops. Failed crops can create food shortages. Food shortages can weaken populations. And weakened populations can become far more vulnerable to disease, conflict, and economic collapse. The people of the 6th century could not see this chain of events coming. They had no satellite. Today, we can look back across 15 centuries and begin to understand what happened. Scientists can read the history of ancient climates in tree rings. They can find volcanic signatures trapped inside layers of ice. Historians can compare those discoveries with accounts written by people who actually witnessed the strange darkness. Piece by piece, the mystery becomes clearer. The year 536 may not have been literally the worst year humanity ever experienced, but it was the beginning of a remarkable period of environmental disruption, followed by famine, disease, and instability across parts of the ancient world. And perhaps the most haunting part of the story is this: the people who lived through it did not know they were living through history. They simply looked toward the dim sun and wondered why their